Welcome everybody to Northwest Indiana Green Drinks, and I'm so excited. We're celebrating our 13th year of doing this, and we actually have with us one of our co-founders, Kathy Sipple. So Kathy, I'm glad you're with us today, and she gets acknowledged for starting this whole thing in Valparaiso, Indiana. So anyhow, I want to do our sponsor recognition first. We have a lot of people that support us, and it's important to let you know who they are. These green drinks are co-sponsored by Save the Dunes, Michigan City Sustainability Commission, and the Northwest Indiana Region Resilience, and that's Kathy Sipple also. Our co-hosts this month are 95.1 FM AM 1420 WIMS radio. And I did a call in this week very early in the morning with them and hopefully reached the number of people we usually don't. 219 Green Connect, Indiana Wildlife Federation, National Wildlife Federation, and Shirley Hines Land Trust. And you'll find out why those last three are listed as we go on in the program. And that's it as far as our sponsors. I'm going to hand this over to Em next so that she is able to do housekeeping with us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Couple of housekeeping notes. We ask that everyone here on Zoom remains muted during the duration of the presentation, but the chat is open. So any questions or anything you want to share there, please leave it in the chat and we'll hopefully have time at the end to answer any questions and get to those. And then anyone watching on Facebook, if you have a question or a comment, please just drop it underneath the video and we'll hopefully get to those as well. Okay, I think that's our housekeeping note. So off to Kathy.
Yeah, I think I'm up. I get to brag a little bit about an initiative that we found out about here on Green Drinks in 2022 from Leslie Shad, who is a resident of both Evanston, Illinois and Michigan City. She happened to mention, hey, there's this community wildlife habitat certification that the National Wildlife Federation offers. Well, I had that same designation in my own yard, but I had no idea there was a community program. So I got very excited about that. And I'm going to put a link in chat to kind of follow the progress of us finding out about it, us signing up for it, and then getting certified. We have since recertified each of the 2 years following the year of the initial certification. And we have a special guest on the line that I want to acknowledge, Dan Borrett from the Indiana Wildlife Federation. I had the chance to meet him a month or so ago down in Indianapolis. So Dan, can you unmute and say hello?
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And I don't think I should be a special guest, but I'm thrilled to be here and just applaud everything that you guys are doing. And Kathy is a dynamo with her ability to get communities galvanized around the whole idea that small scale actions can have big scale impacts. And I think that's really what the beauty of wildlife certification in your own yard, even better in your town, even better in your community, and maybe in your state. You know, no one's done it yet, but I think with Kathy's vision, leadership, and the support of all of you guys, we can start to change the narrative on Indiana, and show that there really is a groundswell of folks who understand the value of actions on the personal level and how cumulatively that can really lead to impactful change for wildlife habitat, and with that, human health and well-being as well, right? I think everyone here, I feel like there's no need to convince here, everyone is on board, but I think there is a growing sense that what is good for wildlife is inherently good for us, right? We tried for so long to separate ourselves from that, and now I think we're at a fulcrum where we're headed back to understanding that there's value in it, right? You know, in Northwest Indiana, so much of your landscape has been changed by human development. I often lament and worry about what could have been with the Kankakee in particular. But it's not coming back in its former glory. But I think what you're doing on a small scale is helping to move back in that direction. Native plants are remarkable at transforming what happens on the landscape, both from a wildlife standpoint, but also from a water standpoint. And that's something that is so underappreciated, is their ability to slow water, hold water, and really have it go through the process it is supposed to. And that is something that I really think is going to be one of the motivating factors for communities in particular to engage with native plantains, is as we continue to unfortunately lose our capacity for water storage, namely in wetlands, native plants can't replace that wholly, but they can certainly buffer the impacts. And I think you guys have done a wonderful job in convincing your municipalities that there's value in that. There's a long way to go, but you're well ahead of the curve, and I think the momentum is going to continue. And I will shut up now. I'm just thrilled to have a group of folks like y'all that are so passionate about both doing, but also spreading the gospel of what you can do in your own capacity. It doesn't have to be a national park. It starts with your own little plot of land, however big it is, and then you get your neighbor, and then your neighbor gets their neighbor, and then all of a sudden there is really some impactful change. And again, Kathy, you know, I am so impressed with what you have done, and I know a lot of the folks on this call have been a part of that. It's just really awesome, and I can't encourage you enough to go out and, if you've never done it, buy a plant, buy a native plant, put it in the ground, and you will be endlessly engrossed in what happens with it. My kids go outside and they see bees that they didn't know exist on whatever native plant is out there. And you know, I do this for a living. Sometimes I had to pull out my phone, take a picture, and figure out what on earth I planted 5 years ago that I've forgotten about. So it's a lot of fun. It's continually changing. And for people like me who aren't particularly good at gardening and don't have a really green thumb, native plants are good at keeping themselves alive. They're a whole lot better than some of these other things you can go out and buy from whatever nursery is selling. So go out, get them, put them in the ground, and just enjoy them, and enjoy that you are really truly doing something impactful for your community, for wildlife, for all of us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your comments, and I just want to back up a little bit. And you said, you know, that we've been good at convincing municipalities. And so far, honestly, it's been a bit of a grassroots effort. What I really love is that we did the regional thing with, you know, 4 counties. We were the first ever to certify a multi-county area. We were going to do Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties. And then Shannon, I saw Shannon just joined us. Shannon from Stark County was like, hey, can Stark be a part of it? I was like, yes, thank you. And she even donated for our registration fee, which was just amazing. So I'm like, of course. So thank you, Shannon, for being here and for all of your support. And now, since we've done that, what I love about this is it's kind of a fractal approach. Just because we've done it regionally doesn't mean that we stop. So I know Tristan from Michigan City is going to talk about how the Michigan City Sustainability Commission is sponsoring a project. Sheila Sweeney is on, and a couple other members from my Valpo Native Plants group where I live in Valparaiso. And we're just kind of a newly formed club, and we started it. We've got Kim Moore on here and a lot of other wild ones, Gibson Woods chapter members, I'm sure, as well, of which I am one. And they just signed up today to certify Lake County. So there's this whole fractal way that we can cover, the map of not just the region, but yeah, state. Let's go for it, guys. Let's do Chicago region. Who knows? But it's a co-opetition. It's not a competition. If you certify your garden in Valparaiso or Michigan City, it's not like it only counts for this or that. It counts for both your city and your county. So it's a really great program. You can get full details on the link that I've shared a couple times in chat. And Nancy, how am I doing? I'm probably about at the end of our time.
Yeah, you are definitely at the end of
I'm
your
so
time.
sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. We have a lot we're doing tonight, which is really exciting.
We
So
do. We do. We definitely do.
yeah, and you mentioned that we did get certified for the whole region, and you do have a certificate. We have a certificate, right? Correct?
Right here. Yes.
Thank you.
And it's on the link that I shared as well. So yes, we do. Do you want me to go ahead and announce our speakers?
Please.
Okay, great. So we want to thank Em and Katie from Save the Dunes. They are going to be talking about, oh boy, I'm letting people in. Okay, and I'm so sorry. I lost the note that shows me their correct title. They're awesome people. This much I know. They're here every single time with green drinks. And Nancy, you were so organized. Do you have
No,
time?
that's okay. Katie and Em, you can introduce yourselves as far
Thank
as
you.
what you do at Save the Dunes, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's all yours.
Okay, then let me share screen and we can get our presentation going.
What's your title, Katie and Em?
We have a slide for that, Nancy. Don't you worry.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, how are we looking? We can see it? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening for Northwest Indiana Green Drinks. I'm Em Racine. I am the Communications and Community Engagement Program Manager for Save the Dunes, and I'm thrilled to be presenting with my program director, Katie Hobgood. Ready, set, go native. Okay. So here we are, meet your presenters. I'll introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Em. I've been with Save the Dunes for a little over a year and a half. I'll be at my 2-year mark in June with Save the Dunes. I am an outdoor enthusiast of many ways, shapes, and forms. I'm a camper and a hiker and a plant enthusiast. I have grown many pollinator and native gardens, and I am thrilled to share with you what I know.
And I am Katie Hobgood. I am the program director at Save the Dunes. I've been with the organization for about 5.5 years. And I've also been on a personal journey to rewild my backyard by installing native plants and different habitat elements in my backyard. So I'm also very excited to be here with you today.
Okay, so I just want to share a quick agenda so we can see what's ahead of us this evening. Hopefully you've come to the presentation with at least a small inkling or curiosity around native gardening. We'll definitely start off with sharing some of the whys behind going native is more important now than ever. And when it comes to plants in your garden, yard, landscaping projects, or just general knowledge about why natives are so important. Then we will talk about some of the landscape level conservation work that Save the Dunes has been working on over the last couple of years, and how implementing native pollinator habitats in our area has been critical to pollinators and humans alike. Then we'll go over some tips on choosing the right plants and refer you to some great free resources that Save the Dunes has produced over the years in regards to natives, and hopefully get you at least started in the right direction if that's where you're going this spring or fall. And then I will highlight my baby at Save the Dunes, really, my pollinator garden on site at the Barker House property that serves as Save the Dunes headquarters. And then, of course, we will kind of end up with some of the other native garden recognitions that are possible to have in your own backyard. Okay. So are we ready? Since we're ready and set and go, native. Okay. Okay. So why go native? I think that this is a question that when you're posed with what you're putting in your yard, why is choosing the right plant so important? Why is choosing natives over other plants so important? So landscaping your home or garden is pretty innate to land ownership in a lot of ways. It gives curb appeal or offer perks like shade or beauty, or maybe you're really wanting to facilitate space in your land for birds and butterflies and other wildlife to have a home alongside yours. That's a good enough reason to start planting natives. Um, Unfortunately, for a really long time, we've kind of been sold this big box planting ideas about what is acceptable lawn or acceptable gardens. And I like to call this Hollywood horticulture in a lot of ways. It's like all about what it looks like and all about what your neighbor thinks about it and judging people on how low or high their grass is. And that has created sort of a hurdle or a something that we all have to kind of get over as homeowners or land stewards, that what we have been maybe taught or what's socially acceptable is, it's time to kind of revisit what is possible. So here are just like, some of those things we don't want to do. But native plants can feel a little unfamiliar territory. If your garden plan usually consists of a quick trip to Home Depot and you're picking out whatever is blooming and you're just taking it home to plant. Some people just like the act of gardening and don't really think that much further about it. But when you really get down to it, planting natives are really an important decision to be making nowadays. So I just want to share a couple little facts about natives and pollinators that just kind of help set the scene of why this is so important. So 1 out of every 3 bites of food are thanks to pollinators. We have food production because of bugs. And as much as we kind of separate those two things when you're physically eating, we wouldn't have edible food without pollinators. Like Dan mentioned, less than 25% of native habitat is remaining untouched. That means that these bugs don't have a lot of food. They're in need. They are lacking their normal ecosystems that they would go to and rely on. So that's where, humans have taken those away. I think it's humans' responsibilities to provide it back to them. And pollinators supply us with billions of dollars of free pollinator services. And I really liked this idea that we don't really think about all of the work that these little pollinators are doing from time to time. But with the pollinators in decline, we're kind of hearing some things around what would be the alternative if the populations continue to decline. And that is really about manual or machine generated pollination, which is, yes, robotic bugs. I think we should support our bugs that we have around and do what we can to provide them with the food that is so necessary for them.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about the landscape scale pollinator conservation work that Save the Dunes has been undertaking. And here we're looking at kind of a zoomed out view of the Northwest Indiana region. So in the light green, you see the footprint of the Indiana Dunes National Park. The pink and purple areas are where restoration work has been done over the past 20 years. So you can see that while our beautiful national park protects a good bit of land in our region, it is incredibly fragmented. It's not just one big square of habitat, it's broken up and it has a lot of edge habitat. So if you think about that from the perspective of a pollinator, a small insect trying to move from one section of habitat to another has a very high likelihood of running into roadways, train tracks, industrial or business complexes, neighborhoods. There's a lot of threats in there. So then if we go to the next slide, this map now adds in the other protected lands that we have in our region. So properties owned by DNR or Shirley Hines Land Trust or other landowners in our area. And so things are starting to look a little bit better, but there's still huge gaps across our landscape. So Save the Dunes, since 2019, we have been working with our partners from the Indiana Dunes National Park, Shirley Hines Land Trust, and others to help improve this issue of connectivity in our region. And one of the key partners we've been working with is actually NIPSCO. So if we go to the next slide, these neon green lines are where the NIPSCO rights of ways, where either their pipelines or their utility lines run. And you can see how these rights of ways connect our region. And so historically, a lot of rights of ways, they're typically turf grass. But through this project, we've been utilizing Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, or GLRI funding, to work with NIPSCO and other partners to create habitat for pollinators on some of these lands that promote connectivity between the national park and other protected lands. So on our next slide, we have an example. This is one of the NIPSCO rights of ways near the Calumet Trail, where they had a construction project. And so instead of just putting in grass seed, they put in native prairie seed to create pollinator corridor to help address that fragmentation. And this is just one example. We've been doing it across the region, and it's been a fantastic project and really something we're very proud to be a part of. If we go to the next slide, I want to come back to this map because that work is incredibly important and something we plan to continue for the foreseeable future. But there's something else that falls in between the natural areas on this map, and that's your backyard. So no matter where you live, you are in the in-between. You're in between two natural places, and you have the opportunity to add another green dot to this map by putting native plants in your garden. You can create an oasis for pollinators and all native wildlife. So to help you do this, let's talk about our pollinator guide. So on our next slide, we have our Living in the Dunes guide series. This is a landscaping guide, volume 1, which you see on the far left with a beach scene. This talks about common invasive plants you might find in your backyard and offers native plants to replace them with. And then volume 2, which you see with the coneflower and the butterfly on the cover, that one's focused on gardening to support pollinators. So both of these can be downloaded for free on our website at savedunes.org/resources. This QR code that I have here, if you're not watching on your phone, you can take a picture and that will take you directly to our pollinator guide, but we can drop the link in the chat as well. So this resource will help you select plants for your garden and will help you learn about the special relationships that exist between native plants and native pollinators. And it goes into fantastic detail. It's a beautiful resource, and you can really learn a lot of really great information. But it also includes template garden designs. You'll see along the bottom here. So if you need some inspiration for layouts that you want to add to your garden, we have those for you. It has plant lists based on your garden type. So whether you have full sun, full shade, rain garden, there's all the different options for you. And then it has a plant list based on that type. So it's a great way to get started forming the list of plants that you want to add to your garden this year. It's a very, very good place to start. And we'll go to the next slide. Just a teaser here, you guys can be in on the ground floor. We are actually kicking off the creation of volume 3 of this guide this month. So the volume 3 is going to be gardening for native bird populations. So make sure you're following Save the Dunes on our social media accounts and sign up for our e-newsletter so you can get notified when that guide is released, which we're planning to be early next year. So very, very excited about that. But going back to your native plant list. So on our next slide, My recommendation would be to have a list of plants that you want to purchase. This is generally not one of those things I would suggest just like showing up to the garden store and seeing what looks pretty and what suits your sun conditions, because all native plants behave differently and you want the ones that are going to fit the space you're trying to put them in. So as you're creating this list, you want to ask yourself several questions. The very first question you want to ask, of course, is this plant native to where I'm going to put it? So just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're speaking the same language, native plants are those that are indigenous and occur naturally in a particular area. And this means that they have evolved in that area over thousands and thousands of years alongside other native plants and animals. And because of that time spent together, they have developed special relationships, and those relationships create checks and balances. So each species is keeping the others in balance, and that equals a diverse and healthy ecosystem. Now, in contrast, non-native plants are those that are not originally from the area that you're planting them in. And often they were brought to our area for horticultural reasons. You know, they're pretty, so people wanted to put them in their gardens. But non-native plants can sometimes be invasive and outcompete surrounding plants because they don't have those checks and balances in place that our natives do. So it can be quite problematic. Also want to mention cultivars, because this is something that's going to come up a lot as you are shopping for your native plants. So a cultivar is a plant that is bred for a specific trait, like making the plant shorter or less likely to spread, or maybe it changes the flower color. They're bred for all different kinds of traits. Anything you can think of, there's probably a cultivar for it. So at most garden stores, you're going to see a lot of cultivars, and all those plants have been genetically modified to look a certain way. And there are cultivars of native species as well. Those are sometimes referred to as nativars. And it's been found that some of these nativars can be less beneficial to pollinators because the genetics change the nutritional value, sometimes of the leaves, sometimes of the nectar or the pollen. It just kind of, it's very species dependent. So the general rule is that it's always best to choose true native plants whenever you can. This is kind of an area of evolving science. There's still a lot of research going on. So if your goal is to support pollinators, it's always best to just choose true native species.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to add on to this why we chose to show a native echinacea versus a cultivar echinacea here. These are both technically coneflowers here in the pictures, but you can tell that the native is kind of a little bit more droopy, a little bit sparser petals, and it has been cultivated into a native R to be much more robust in flowers. Maybe it definitely spreads more aggressively than the native and those sorts of things. So it is definitely important to pay attention to those little details, make a big difference.
Okay, so if we go to the next slide, let's talk briefly about how to kind of narrow down your list. You've started with our pollinator guide, so you've got your list started. You've double checked that everything on your list is native to where you want to put it. So here's some additional criteria you want to consider when narrowing down that list. First, what type of soil do you have? Many native plants are generalists, so they'll tolerate a variety of conditions, but some like very specific things. So you want to make sure that the plants on your list will like the soil that you have in your garden. Next, you should consider the aesthetics of your garden because you want to enjoy being in it. It's very important that you like your garden because then you are more likely to spend time in it and care for it. So being thoughtful about plant heights and bloom colors, this can add a nice artistic flair to your garden. And also note that some native plants can get quite tall. So you want to be sure that you're paying attention to the mature size that that plant is going to grow into when you're planning like spacing and any support that those plants might need. And finally, you want to incorporate plants that will be blooming all season from early spring to late fall, because pollinators are here year round actually, but they need food early spring to late fall. So ideally, you would have at least 3 things blooming at all times throughout the growing season. That might be something to work up to if you're just starting your garden, but that's, kind of a goal to set for yourself. And just to note, our pollinator guide is organized by bloom time. So that will help you choose things that are blooming during the entire growing season. Okay, and then next step, now you've got your plant list, you know what you want. We'll talk about where to get some plants in a little bit, but I'll say you've got your garden plants and you plant them. Now, of course, you can plant your garden at any time of the year, but you want to keep in mind that if you plant in the spring or summer, you're just going to need to water it more because it needs to be well watered that first year. Just like any other garden at that point, you've got baby plants and you want to support them while they're getting established. So if you can wait, fall is an ideal time to plant a native garden just because you don't have to go through that whole warm growing season of keeping it watered. And then as the temperatures cool, then the plant tends to put more energy into strengthening their root system, which helps them get established without wasting energy growing a bunch of leaves and blooms. So fall is great if you can wait that long. But if not, regardless of when you plant your garden, you'll want to keep your garden watered and weeded all the way up until the first frost. And then at that point, your plants will go dormant and then you can take a little bit of a break until the spring. I want to keep in mind that native gardens, typically take 2 to 3 seasons to fully mature. So there's a little bit of patience. Patience is key here. And not every plant is going to bloom in its first year, but it will be worth the wait, I promise. They are truly amazing plants. During this 2 to 3 year period, while your garden is getting established, you'll be giving your garden some support. So providing water during really dry periods, and again, keeping it weeded so your plants aren't competing for soil nutrients. And mulch is pretty helpful with both of these issues. So weed prevention and moisture retention, if you can get a nice dye-free natural mulch, that would probably be a really great addition to your garden. And then after that 2 to 3 year period, your garden will be considered established. So it will, at that point, require less maintenance. And as long as the plant is happy with its accommodations, it likes where it is, then it will likely be sticking around long term and likely growing and multiplying. And so I love that about native plants because it's an opportunity to share plant starts or seeds, and give them to friends or neighbors and get other people excited about native plants as well. Okay, and then one other thing I want to say before I turn it back over to Em is about some best practices for fall and spring garden cleanup. So this actually goes for any of your gardens, not just your native gardens, but as you add native plants into your landscape, you will be attracting more pollinators and beneficial insects and critters. So the way that you clean up your garden becomes even more important at that point. So many pollinators, insects, small mammals, amphibians, reptiles, etc., spend the winter months hidden in or beneath the leaf litter. Leaves provide insulation from the cold and camouflage from predators. So this is why it's very important to leave the leaves in the fall and not bag up or burn your leaves when you're doing fall garden cleanup. So instead, either leave your leaves actually where they fall if you can, or collect them and put them in your garden beds as kind of a natural mulch. Although don't mulch them because then you're mulching the things in the leaves, but just put them in your garden beds. Additionally, some native bees burrow into the stalks of hollow plant stems and lay their eggs inside. So instead of pulling up all your plants or cutting them at ground level in the fall, just leave them in place so that anything inside can have the chance to grow and survive over the winter. Now, when spring comes, this is a very vulnerable time for pollinators and other insects. Most pollinators use temperature to tell them when it's time to come out of their winter hiding place. So if you clean up your garden too soon in the springtime before they have emerged, you're getting rid of more than just leaves, right? All those critters that are overwintering are still in there and you're getting rid of them as well. So the general rule is to wait until we've had 7 consecutive days of 50-degree weather in the springtime before doing your spring garden cleaning. However, I would say the longer you can wait, the better, basically. You know how our springs are. We can have a week of warm, and then followed by a snowstorm the next day. So keeping your leaf litter in place so that the pollinators and other critters have somewhere to retreat back to when a cold snap comes is going to increases their chance of survival. So I'm officially giving you permission to put off your spring garden cleanup. And we can't plant most things outside until May anyway. So just let the pollinators keep their cozy leaves for as long as you can. But if you want to be a stickler for the rules, it's 7 consecutive days of 50-degree weather. And then you can clean up your garden in the spring.
Okay, thanks, Katie, for all that information. Now that we've covered some of the suggestions and little details around native plants and why they're so important and best practices with natives, I want to share some really exciting news. So, Save the Dunes is all about leading our community toward environmental equilibrium, whether it's through advocacy, community engagement, or landscape level conservation. So when it came down to pollinator gardens, we said we can't just talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. And that meant installing our very own pollinator garden on site at the Barker House. So the vision for the native pollinator garden on the property has been years in the making. It has been trial and error over the course of a couple of seasons, and that started with we tried cold weather seeding, we tried random plantings, we tried volunteer milkweed taking over. We have let this space on the property of the Barker House see what she could see for the last couple of years, but we finally really started to make some progress at the end of 2023. So our planning, I want to share some of our visioning and planning and hope to inspire you to show you that you can do it. We have all the resources here in our own backyard to get you going in that direction. So we really started by looking at our pollinator guide. We chose our soil. So at the Barker House, it's full sun and the soil is really a mix of sandy and soil. So we went with the prairie design. We checked our list of plants from the list in our pollinator guide and began using that list based on its bloom time, its footprint, and its size in general as to where we wanted to plot them out. So you can see in the picture on the left, we went old school paper and pencil. We had lots of lists and cross-reference lists to make sure that the plan was coming together nicely. And we started plotting them out. We knew we wanted plants that grew taller to be in the back of the garden, so not to block signage or creep into the pathway. We knew we wanted to have plants that really stood their boundaries around the boundaries of the path. So we picked plants that had really sturdy footprints to go around there and just let the plants' own native behaviors dictate how we were going to welcome them into our garden. This is not native gardening is definitely not about having a perfect vision and putting in the plants and having them behave. That's not what they're wild. They're not meant to behave so perfectly. And then we also use the design suggestions, like Katie mentioned in the guide, to inform that decision. So how many plants clumped together in a certain area, or color palette to, make sure that we were having a mix of colors in our garden. And I just want to give a small shout out to Stantec and our previous board member, Paul Labus, who tenderly grew over 500 plugs for us at the Nature Conservancy of these native plants of our choosing, and Stantec for donating those plants to make our garden a reality. So here is a little before and after. So really kicked off in our volunteer day in October of 2023. We looked at our plot, we cleared away what was there from the previous attempts at establishing this garden. There was not too much that had come back, but we left some things like the milkweed that was there, but took away most of the grass. I think grass is one of the biggest hurdles in like when you're establishing a new garden, because can really come back or spread over really quickly. And when you're working with little itty bitty baby plants, the grass is its biggest competitor. So we had a really good volunteer day. And then almost whole year later, we got to installing after planning and connecting and making sure that we were putting these plants in the right places. We were joined by a group of volunteers from a local business in Michigan City, and we got, like I said, over 500 plugs put into the ground on this day. And then we've got the after picture of what it looked like after install. We are taking a little bit more of a natural approach to our garden. We got the mulch from Porter County Recycling. They have free natural mulch that you can access as long as you have a truck to haul it off to your garden and are willing to do a bit of manual labor. And then we lined the path with cut tree trunks or tree branches from the Barker House property as well. So we're reducing and reusing and recycling in more ways than one at Save the Dunes. But that was the garden in fall of last year, and we're really excited about what it's going to look like this spring. It has definitely been a waiting game in a lot. We're curious as to what plants are going to come back, which ones are going to do really well, if our fence warded off enough of our pests of our deer friends in Barker Woods. We will see. But, that's kind of the thing with plants in general is it's all a learning experience, is a learning curve. It might seem really daunting to shift your mindset if you've been doing gardening in a specific way and now you hear all of this about why natives are so important or switching to something else. But like, trust yourself that you can start small. Maybe you've seen a coneflower in someone else's yard and wanted, and that's a great start. Or, maybe you've admired someone's black-eyed Susan patch and said, wow, look at how gorgeous and full of bees and butterflies that patch is. Start small. This is not a huge plot of land. So it's going to make a big difference though, and I'm really excited to see who comes to visit our pollinator garden this spring. I know this is probably a question that's on the top of most people's minds, so we'll get to the native plant sales. Where can you buy these plants? Luckily, that's why we do this presentation in March. So you're very well prepared. You have the rest of this month to look at the pollinator guide and make some decisions and inform maybe what you want to do this spring, and then start maybe placing some orders for native plants. So here's just a quick list of some of the native plant sales that are on our radar. There may be many more, so if you do have another one that's not listed up here, please drop it in the chat and we'd be happy to add it to our blog post of that's there at the bottom, linked at the bottom of this screen, that has a running list of native plant sales. So Gibson Wild Ones, Friends of the Indiana Dunes, Miller Garden Club, the Dunes Calumet Audubon, which will be at the Birding Fest, and the Gabbis Arboretum. I like to mention that a couple of them do have pre-orders available, like Katie mentioned. You don't want to just go into the native plant sales and pick out whatever is left or take whatever looks cool. This is definitely something that you want to be a little bit more informed about before you go and make it. They're also an investment. Like, let's be honest, native plants are more costly at the beginning, but they're perennials, so they're going to come back year after year and spread and fill out. And so it's kind of a little bit of an investment, but what could be better than making an investment for nature? So the other thing, if you are interested in the garden and maybe you're still getting your toes wet or hands dirty or however we want to call that of the garden equivalent, the garden at the Barker House is not just a pollinator garden. It is also a community focused green space, and I really wanted to serve as a demonstration garden. If you have a question or you're wanting to get hands-on learning experience or see and hear from someone who's an expert, or at least trying to be an expert like myself or Katie. We're out there, we're trying and we're learning constantly. We have multiple volunteer days, drop-in volunteer days at the Barker House Garden scheduled, and I will be out there. On both April 5th and May 3rd. April 5th is going to be about waking up your garden. By that point, we will hopefully have seen those consecutive warm days and can start to do a little bit of tidying, maybe some early plants, who's coming up, weeding for sure. I'm going to be weeding a lot in this garden. So if you find weeding meditative, please join me. On either of those dates. And then in May, we're going to do early plant ID because we do want to see who's coming back from our plethora of plugs that got put in last year. But because things bloom all across the season, we want to learn how to ID them before they're blooming. So we're going to have a native plant expert out with us on May 3rd. And if you don't want to garden at all, but want to see the garden and reap the benefits of being in green spaces, please join us also in May for Yoga in the Garden with Sacred Dunes Health, which is being made possible by funding through the Health Foundation of LaPorte. And if this kind of was not enough, you're still looking for more, you want to get more information, and please check out our YouTube page. Katie gave a great presentation on a beginning guide to native gardening. Katie also just did Katie has done many talks about native plants, and they're all on our YouTube page. So if you need more information, please use all the free resources at Save the Dunes YouTube page, our resource page on our website. You can find that on this QR code as well. And so I know we talked a little bit about designations, but I think that there are some other folks on the call that have more information about these. But these are just a couple that are possible, and it's fun to get recognized and some recognition for all of your hard work. And all of these recognitions offer that. And I think a little sign is also, like you said, to your neighbors that something's going on, like it's not just a normal garden, it's a garden that's serving the purpose of protecting and promoting pollinator habitat. So put your sign up.
That's great. If I could just interject something here too, if that's possible.
First.
This is actually our 4th presentation on pollinator gardens. And all 3 of those previous presentations are on Save the Dunes YouTube subscription page.
So I can leave my screen up if the next person who wants to talk, Tristan, I think, is going to talk about some designations, or if anyone has any other details about this. I know a little bit more about the Bringing Nature Home Shirley Hines one, but
let's let Tristan follow up with the certified wildlife habitat that's happening in Michigan City.
Yeah. So I'll be going over the National Wildlife Foundation's certification habitat thing. So on July 22nd of 2024, so last year, Michigan State joined the National Wildlife Federation's Community Wildlife Habitats program. This allows us to transform our city of 31,000 residents into a healthier, more sustainable, and wildlife-friendly city. And it also will earn us a Community Wildlife Habitat certification, the one you see on your screen here. We do this by gathering points. These points are based on our city's population. So if you live somewhere more rural, that will be a different goal for you than us. For us, as I said, 31,000 residents, this means we have to get 250 points in total. However, there are categories in addition to this 250 point goal that you need to meet. Those categories are registration, education, community outreach, and administration. And that those points also can vary based on your population as well. And I'm sure you're probably wondering who can certify. So this can vary, so it goes from households, common areas, so like public parks, businesses, farms, places of worship, universities, and also pre-K to 12 schools and nature centers. Point wise, households equate to 1 point. Common areas are like 3 points, and schools and nature centers are 5 points. And then before we dive into the data that we have on our end in terms of Michigan City, I just want to note that there is a one-time fee to certify with National Foundation Wildlife, which is just $25 to support the cost of the program. But yes, let's get into this exciting data. So right now in Michigan City, we have 47 habitats certified. This totals 65 points out of the 250 points that we need. The first category, as mentioned, is registration. There we have 25 points out of 40. In the education category, we have 15 points out of the 40 that we need. And for community outreach, we are at 25 points out of the goal of 50. And lastly, with administration, we're at 5 out of 20. And I can imagine that was a lot of data. So however you choose to, like view that, I think it's very remarkable progress that we made with so much so much little time that we already got there and everything. But right now is a great time to certify your garden. As National Wildlife Federation has, they actually have a deal going on right now if you certify. So the $25 fee, as mentioned, and now you can get a sign or flag with it for just an extra $18. And I'll drop that into the chat as well.
That's quite a deal. I had to pay for my sign. It's good.
Thank you for all that information. Just a little bit about Shirley Hines's. I think I could give a little bit of details about that. They have this Bringing Nature Home garden designation. I'm hoping to get our Barker House garden designated first by Shirley Hines this year. The requirements are that you have native plant habitat, that there's a water source of some sort, so that can look like a bird bath or a pond if you're so lucky to have any other water source on your property. Some place for the pollinators to nest or rear their young, so that can look like a good twig pile or a nice pile of leaves that you've left over, or the little bug houses. There's lots of different ways to give them all the things that they need. And then you get this great designated sign, and then Shirley Hines will come and visit your garden and take a really cute picture of you in your garden and post it on their website with all the other folks who have gotten this designation. So even if your community is not right next door yet, you have a little group online community of other designated pollinator gardens in your neighborhood.
Kathy, could you kindly lead us into question and answer period?
Yes,
We have probably about 4 minutes if we're going to have some announcements.
I'd be happy to. I've been checking Facebook Live and didn't see them. I do see Ken's got a hand up, so I'd love to hear what Ken Schoen has. Can you unmute and tell us your question, Ken? Ken, are you with us? I can't hear you. Maybe type into chat your question. I'm looking for hands up, so if anybody else has a question, like Nancy said, we've got limited time, but
And did anybody drop any questions into the chat?
I've been seeing comments that we've been kind of,
Yeah, it looks like all comments to me.
yeah, and people were asking about where can they find native plants, and I think we've done a good job of sharing that, and we will include that on Facebook as well. Please, would you put the post of the YouTube link that was in the presentation? Let's see, which one was that? I'm not sure about the YouTube link.
I think that was to the Native Gardening for Beginners YouTube. And that one is actually on the IUN YouTube, just to throw a confusing loop into this conversation. So I'll put that link in the chat.
Excellent. Ken, still waiting if you are able to unmute and tell us your question. We don't have too much time.
I see a question about native plants, and are any of them do some of them have some deer deterrent or deer defensive qualities to them? That's really the only question I see.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, so we've had this question also with our garden planting. Hence, if you come to Barker House right now, the garden is protected by a really ugly orange fence, in hopes that the garden can get established and get a little bit bigger and not keep getting deadheaded by the deer. There are some natural, like different sprays or powders or things that are sold at different stores that could help deter. A fence does work if you want to put things behind a fence. I'm open to if anyone else knows if there's specifically natives, but that's like we said, native plants and the animals are coexisting with each other. So we put these natives out, and the native animals of our region say, "Thank you so much for this buffet," because their habitat has been lost, right? So if we think about, they used to have all of this plants to eat, that now that they've been given this great buffet of exactly their favorite food that they might have been missing for all those years, they're really excited to see it.
I love your deer buffet analogy. That's perfect, actually. Okay. It looks like we're tied up with questions now. I do have a take action announcement to make that I want to be sure everybody knows about. I think everybody, well, I'm not going to say anybody. I'm just going to say many of you have probably seen the challenge that the Indiana Dunes National Park is facing right now. Our sister partner, is Save the Dunes, and they had 4 people that were fired unjustly during the first round of I'm just going to call it layoffs, because these people had outstanding 5-point ratings from their supervisors. And what we're doing is we're actually calling our 2 senators, Senator Young and Senator Banks. And also we're asking them to please reinstate these people in their positions, because they're needed. They're desperately needed. Our park was working on a very slim and trim staff before this happened, and they've lost some very important positions that they need going into the summer. So make a phone call to Senator Young and Senator Banks, and make a phone call to actually thank Congressman Frank Mrvan, because he's been very supportive and helpful to us. You'll want to share the information that Save the Dunes actually has on their website. They have a call to action page, and you just go to that and put in keywords, call your reps today to support the Indiana Dunes, and they'll pull that up for you. It's a 3-step process. And then after you've contacted them, if you hear back from them or whatever, then let us know about that. You can send an email to m@savedunes.org or to harshini@savedunes.org. And please follow us on our newsletter, and we'll often post take action items on Facebook or wherever. So that's how to really help us through this crisis that we're going through right now.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, you can find all that information, links to things on our Facebook and socials. So if you need more direction, like Nancy said, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Harshini. I'm still in DC. We've been lobbying all week on the Hill for GLRI, which, like Katie mentioned, funds amazing pollinator connectivity projects in our area. So we can use all the constituent help that we can get right now. I have a couple of event announcements, not too many for the month of March. So really the next event we'll see you on is the Green Drinks event on the first Thursday of April. And then after that, Save the Dunes will be all over at Earth Day events. So check your calendars, whether you're in Porter or LaPorte or Lake County. We will be at East Chicago's Earth Day Festival. We will be at Michigan City's Earth Day Festival. So all of those events are also on our website. There's too many to list, honestly, right now. But Save the Dunes, savedunes.org/events. You'll see all of those on there.
Great. Okay, M, Kathy, Katie, Tristan, do any of you have anything more to add, or have we wrapped it up pretty well?
I just want to say I have saved the chat, and anything we missed, I will address on the Facebook and put in links. I've been trying to keep up, but there's been a few questions here at the 11th hour, so I'm trying, yeah.
Okay, Kathy, thank you for doing that and for back looping and being sure everything is neatly tied up. And I just want to say too, our April Green Drinks, the Michigan City Forester and the president of the Michigan City Tree Board will be presenting on the $1 million planting grant that they received. So I think it's going to be a very exciting presentation from them. So I invite everybody to come and attend that. Okay, with that, I declared a wrap, and thank you all so very much, all four of you, a most excellent program. And also too, thank you for, oh my goodness, his name just flew out of my head, from Indiana Wildlife Foundation. What's his name, Kathy?
Dan Borrett.
Dan Borrett, thank you for joining us this evening to a special treat.
And the team that helped us get certified. Too many to mention, but Shannon was here. Dolly was a big part of that. I'm always going to get in trouble when I start naming people, but I'll at least name the people who are on the call. So thanks for all of your help.
Okay. We'll
Thank
see you in
you.
April.
Take care.